The alien woman stood in the dense jungle, her eyes scanning the surroundings. She was tall and imposing, with sleek gray skin and piercing blue eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Her mission was clear: capture the human intruder and bring him back to her people. Her species, the Zorathians, were conquerors. They had mastered the art of taking control of worlds, bending them to their will. No planet had ever proven too difficult for them to dominate. They had advanced technology that could terraform barren lands into lush forests or wipe out entire populations with a single thought. Yet here she was, hunting a human. The Zorathians had come to this planet many years ago, intending to claim it as their own. But the humans had been different. They weren't like the other species her people had encountered. They didn't bend easily. They fought back. She had been ordered to capture one of them alive, to study them. It was a simple task, she thought. A human couldn't possibly stand a chance against the might of the Zorathians. But as she tracked him, something started to change. She wasn't sure what it was yet, but something about this human made her uneasy. The human had entered the jungle the day before, alone. He had no weapons, at least none that she could see. He had been carefully moving through the dense undergrowth, not rushing, but not slowing down either. She had followed him, using her enhanced senses to stay out of his sight. The human was quick. His senses, though not as sharp as hers, were incredibly alert. He seemed to be moving as though he knew he was being watched. The mission seemed like it would be a quick success, but as the hours passed, she realized this wouldn't be as easy as she had expected. The human was smart. He seemed to know the jungle as well as she did. Every time she thought she had him cornered, he slipped away. At first, she was sure it was just a fluke. He was lucky, that's all. But the more she watched him, the more she realized there was something about him that made him different. She had observed him through the night, his movements becoming more deliberate as he set up camp. She had been careful not to get too close. She didn't want to risk revealing herself just yet. The human had started a fire. He had no matches, no fuel, no technology, nothing that should have worked. But somehow, he had gathered wood and struck a fire with nothing but a rock and his hands. She had never seen anything like it. How could he have known how to do that? Her species had discovered fire long before they had mastered space travel. But this human, he was making it look easy, with nothing more than his own wits. The fire crackled in the darkness, its orange glow casting strange shadows on the alien trees. The human sat beside it, staring into the flames, lost in thought. From the way he sat, the way his body relaxed, she could tell that he wasn't afraid. Most creatures, when faced with the dangers of this jungle, would have been tense, alert, constantly watching for predators. But not him. He seemed at peace, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. The alien woman couldn't understand it. Humans were supposed to be fragile. They weren't supposed to survive in a place like this. The jungle was alive with deadly creatures, most of which had evolved to hunt and kill with a vicious efficiency. Yet this human had not only survived, it seemed like he was thriving. His calmness was unnerving. For a moment, the alien woman considered abandoning the mission. Maybe the human would make his way back to his people, and they would simply leave. But that wasn't an option. Her orders were clear. She had to capture him. She had to bring him back alive. This wasn't just about proving the superiority of her species. This was about studying the humans. Her people needed to understand what made them different from every other species they had encountered. Why were they so resilient? What made them able to survive, even in the harshest of environments? The Zorathians had always been a dominating species, but the humans were different. Her people had conquered countless planets, forcing their ways onto each one. They had eradicated those who opposed them, taken what they wanted, and moved on to the next conquest. But the humans, they resisted. They didn't submit. She had heard the stories of human rebellions on other worlds, of their willingness to fight back even when faced with insurmountable odds. She had seen it in their eyes, the will to survive. She found herself staring at him longer than she had intended. It wasn't just his ability to adapt to the environment that intrigued her. It was something deeper. There was something in his eyes, a kind of spark, a stubbornness. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was trying to conquer. And that was something the Zorathians could relate to. She shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. No, she wasn't here to sympathize with him. She wasn't here to learn from him. She was here to capture him. As the night passed, she moved in closer, her senses sharp. The human had drifted off to sleep, the crackling fire the only light in the dark jungle. She could see him clearly now, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His posture was relaxed, almost defenseless. It was the perfect opportunity to strike. The alien woman prepared herself. She had been trained in stealth, in capturing prey without leaving a trace. She moved silently, her movements fluid, almost ghost-like. Her footsteps made no sound as she moved through the underbrush. She was close now, just a few meters away from the human. Her fingers hovered over the controls of her stun weapon. One shot, and he would be immobilized, unable to resist as she brought him back to her ship. But just as she was about to make her move, something changed. She wasn't sure what it was at first. Some strange feeling in the air, a shift in the energy around her. It was like the jungle itself had noticed her presence. She froze. Something was wrong. She wasn't alone. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Something massive, a dark shape moving between the trees, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. She could feel the weight of its gaze on her, as though it were tracking her every move. The predator was closing in, and it was far bigger, far more dangerous than any creature she had seen on this planet. It was a hunter, and she was its prey. In that moment, her focus shifted. She wasn't thinking about capturing the human anymore. She was thinking about survival. The predator had detected her, and now it was after her. But the human, he hadn't moved. He was still asleep by the fire, unaware of the danger. The alien woman had no time to worry about him now. She had to deal with the predator before it was too late. With quick reflexes, she activated the cloaking mechanism on her suit, blending into the environment. The predator paused, its glowing eyes narrowing as it sniffed the air, searching for its target. The alien woman's heart raced. She had never been this close to death before. The predator was fast, and if it sensed her, she wouldn't stand a chance. She slowly backed away, trying to distance herself from the creature. But as she did, she heard a noise, a sharp crack, the sound of a branch snapping. The predator's head whipped around, its gaze locking onto the human. The alien woman's breath caught in her throat. The human had woken up. He was standing now, looking at the predator as if he wasn't at all surprised to see it. And that's when the alien woman realized. This human wasn't like anyone she had ever encountered. The alien woman's breath caught in her throat as she watched the human stir. Until now, he had seemed like just another fragile creature, a weakling that her species would easily dominate. But now, as he stood up, eyes narrowed, facing the looming predator, something deep inside her shifted. She had been tracking this human for days. She had seen him stumble through the dense jungle and wondered how he managed to survive in such a hostile environment. But this was different. This was not the behavior of a frightened animal trying to escape. This human wasn't backing away from danger. He was standing tall, ready to confront it. And for the first time, the alien woman felt the sting of doubt. Was this human really the prey she had thought him to be? The predator was massive. It was unlike anything she had seen before. Its body was sleek and muscular, built for speed, with sharp claws that could rip through steel. Its eyes glowed a deep, menacing red, and its breath came in slow, deliberate gusts, as though it was savoring the moment before the kill. The air itself seemed to shiver with its presence, and the trees around them trembled. Yet the human wasn't running. He was staring the predator down as though he were preparing for battle. The alien woman had never seen anything like it. Humans were supposed to be weak, They didn't have the sharp senses of the Zorathians. They didn't possess the speed or the strength to match a creature like this. But the way the human stood, his body taut with tension, his eyes locked on the beast, told her one thing: he wasn't afraid. For a moment, the alien woman simply watched, unable to believe what she was seeing. What was this human doing? Was he out of his mind? He didn't have the tools or the skills to defeat such a creature. He was alone, in the middle of an alien jungle, facing something that could tear him apart in seconds. The predator growled, a low, guttural sound that echoed through the jungle. It took a slow step forward, its body coiling like a spring, ready to strike. The human didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deep breath, his hand moving toward his waist, where a weapon was strapped. The alien woman's heart skipped a beat. Was he going to use a weapon? She hadn't seen him with one before. In fact, when she had been tracking him, she had seen no signs of advanced technology, nothing that could explain his survival. But now, he was pulling something from his side, and her eyes narrowed as she watched. The weapon he revealed was unlike anything she had expected. It wasn't bulky or heavy. It was sleek, compact, almost elegant. The human held it easily in his hand, as though it were an extension of his body. The alien woman had never seen anything like it. The Zorathians had mastered many forms of weaponry: blasters, energy cannons, and even devices that could manipulate time itself. But this was something different. The human raised the weapon, pointing it directly at the predator. For a moment, everything was still. Even the jungle seemed to hold its breath, as if it were waiting to see what would happen next. The predator's glowing eyes narrowed, its muscles tensing as it prepared to leap. The alien woman's instincts screamed at her to act, to intervene, but she was frozen, watching, unsure of what would come next. Then, in one smooth motion, the human squeezed the trigger. The blast of energy was quick, almost too fast for the alien woman to track. The predator let out a startled hiss, its body jerking as if struck by an invisible force. It stumbled back, the powerful muscles in its legs giving out for just a moment. And that was all the human needed. In the blink of an eye, the human took another shot, this one even more precise than the first. The predator's body spanned, and then collapsed, crashing to the ground with a deafening thud. Its eyes flickered once, twice, before going dim, the light fading from them completely. The jungle fell silent. The alien woman stood there, her mouth slightly open, eyes wide in disbelief. She had watched creatures fight before, but this was different. The human had just defeated a predator that could have killed her with a single swipe of its claws. She had been certain that the human stood no chance, but now she was forced to reconsider everything she thought she knew. The human didn't waste time celebrating or reveling in his victory. Instead, he lowered the weapon and calmly walked toward the fallen predator, his eyes never leaving its massive form. The alien woman could see the cold calculation in his gaze. There was no fear, no hesitation, just focus. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for the creature. It had been a powerful predator, perhaps the deadliest in the jungle, but it had been nothing more than a challenge for this human. The way he approached it, it wasn't just about survival for him. It was about mastery. The human kneeled beside the predator's body, examining it with an almost clinical detachment. His fingers traced the edges of the creature's sharp claws, as though he were studying its biology. The alien woman couldn't help but marvel at his composure. Most beings, faced with such a creature, would be terrified. But this human, he was calm. His actions spoke of experience, of someone who had seen danger before and faced it head-on. The alien woman felt a sense of awe mixed with something else, something unfamiliar. It was respect. She had been sent to capture him, to subdue him. But now she found herself reconsidering that mission. This human wasn't just a weakling. He wasn't just a survivor. He was something more. Her thoughts were interrupted as the human suddenly stood up, his eyes now scanning the jungle, alert and aware. He wasn't done. He hadn't just defeated a predator. He was preparing for something else, something the alien woman didn't yet understand. But before she could act, he spoke. "You know," the human said, his voice steady and calm, "it's not wise to sneak up on someone, especially when you're dealing with something like that." The alien woman's heart raced as she realized he had known she was there all along. She hadn't made a sound. She had used her cloaking technology to stay hidden. How had he known? He turned toward her, his eyes locking onto hers. There was no surprise in his gaze, no shock at the fact that she had been watching him. Instead, there was only a quiet acknowledgement, as though this was exactly what he had expected. "You're following me, aren't you?" he asked, his voice carrying an odd mixture of amusement and understanding. The alien woman said nothing. She stood motionless, unsure of how to respond. How had he known? Was he aware of her presence the entire time? It didn't make sense. She had been so careful, so precise, and yet here he was, reading her every move as if she were an open book. "You're not very good at hiding, you know," the human continued, his tone light. "Maybe you should try being a little less obvious next time." The alien woman's mind raced. How did he know? She had studied humans before, of course, but nothing in her research had suggested they possessed the ability to detect other beings in the way this human seemed to. Was it his senses, his experience, or was there something else at play here? Without waiting for a response, the human began to walk toward her, his steps slow but deliberate. He didn't seem afraid. In fact, he seemed almost curious. "Are you going to keep watching me from the shadows?" he asked, his tone now somewhat teasing. "Or are you going to show yourself?" The alien woman remained still, her mind swirling with confusion and something else, something she couldn't quite name. She was supposed to be the one in control. She was the one with the superior technology, the one with the power to capture him. And yet, here she was, standing in front of a human who had just killed one of the most dangerous creatures on this planet with ease, who had outsmarted her at every turn. "Why are you following me?" the human asked again, his voice softening slightly. "What do you want from me?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay hidden, to observe him more, to learn more about this strange, unexpected human. But something in his eyes, the calm certainty, the respect, the challenge, made her realize that her time for hiding was over. Finally, she stepped forward, revealing herself from the shadows. And as their eyes met, the alien woman knew that her mission had just become far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The jungle around them was eerily quiet, the air thick with tension. The alien woman's heart pounded in her chest, and her eyes remained fixed on the human who now stood before her, as if daring her to make a move. She had come here to capture him, to bring him back to her people, but now, after watching him defeat the mighty predator, she was filled with doubt. This human was nothing like what she had expected. Her hand was still resting on the hilt of her weapon, but she didn't reach for it. Her instincts, honed over many years, screamed at her to strike, but something held her back. The human's confidence, his calm demeanor in the face of such danger, was unsettling. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment, expecting something to happen, even if he didn't know exactly what. And then, a low growl broke the silence. The alien woman's eyes shot upward, her senses instantly alert. She didn't need to see the creature to know what it was. She had heard that growl before, the unmistakable sound of something far larger and far more dangerous than any predator she had encountered in the jungle. The human didn't seem startled, didn't even flinch. He had heard it too. His body tensed slightly, but he didn't move. It was as though he had anticipated the attack all along. The alien woman felt a chill run down her spine. She knew the jungle was dangerous. She had seen the beasts that stalked its depths, monstrous creatures with teeth and claws designed to tear through flesh, beasts that could track a target for miles. But this creature was something else entirely. It was a predator, one of the apex hunters of this world. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the predator slowly emerged from the shadows. At first, the alien woman saw only its eyes, glowing bright red and full of malice. Then, like a dark storm, the massive form of the creature stepped forward. It was a towering figure, easily twice the size of a normal human, its body covered in sleek black scales that glistened in the dim light. Its jaws were wide, sharp teeth gleaming like knives, and its claws extended several feet from its paws, each one capable of rending flesh from bone. The creature's eyes fixed on the human, and the alien woman saw the flash of hunger within them. The human did not move. Instead, he stared into the glowing eyes of the predator, meeting its gaze without a hint of fear. The alien woman's jaw tightened as she watched. How could he be so calm? Did he not understand the danger? He had just survived one encounter with a deadly beast. But this was a different level of threat. The predator in front of them was a seasoned killer, a creature that hunted without mercy. And yet, the human wasn't retreating. He wasn't running, wasn't hiding. Instead, he was studying the predator, watching its every movement, as though he were trying to understand it. For the first time, the alien woman felt a flicker of uncertainty. Was this human really capable of defeating such a beast again? The predator was not some random creature. It was the apex of this world's food chain. It had killed countless others before, and it would kill countless more unless it was stopped. Yet, the human remained motionless, a slight smirk forming on his lips. The predator growled again, louder this time, stepping closer, its massive form blocking out the light. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, as if even the trees were afraid of the coming clash. The alien woman felt the heat of the creature's breath on the air, its scent thick with the metallic tang of blood. She knew that if the predator struck, it would be over quickly. No human could survive an attack like that. No one, not even the Zorathians, could. But still, the human didn't move. Move, she whispered under her breath. She didn't know why she was telling him to move. It was as though, somehow, her instincts were telling her this wasn't a fight he could win. He had already proven himself capable, but this was something else entirely. Then suddenly, the predator lunged. It was so fast, so brutal, that even the alien woman couldn't track its movement. The creature's claws extended with terrifying speed, and in an instant, it was almost upon the human. The alien woman instinctively took a step back, preparing to activate her weapons. But the human, he did something she never could have anticipated. In one fluid motion, the human rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the predator's deadly swipe. He moved with an agility that defied all logic, dodging as though he had done it 1,000 times before. The predator roared in frustration, its massive claws carving deep grooves into the earth where the human had been standing only moments before. The human was already on his feet, moving swiftly to a higher ground, an outcrop of rock that jutted out from the jungle floor. His movements were controlled, almost too calm for someone facing such a dangerous predator. It was as if he had dealt with creatures like this before, and that thought sent a jolt of fear through the alien woman. What kind of human was this? The predator snarled, its eyes narrowing in irritation. It circled around, searching for its prey. But the human wasn't waiting. From his position on the rock, he aimed something at the creature, something that looked like a simple stick at first, but then the alien woman saw it clearly. It was a weapon, just like the one the human had used before. It wasn't like any weapon she had seen before, though. It was small, compact, and sleek, yet it seemed powerful enough to take down the creature. The human's fingers tightened around the grip, his eyes focused, locked onto the predator's next move. Then, in the blink of an eye, the human fired. The shot was like a flash of light. The predator howled as the blast struck it, sending the creature staggering back. It wasn't a mortal wound, but it was enough to stun it, enough to cause it to pause for just a second. The human didn't waste that opportunity. He took another shot, this time aiming for the predator's vulnerable underbelly. The blast struck true, and the creature howled in pain, its claws scraping the rock as it tried to regain its balance. It was clear now. The human wasn't just trying to survive. He was hunting the predator, just as it hunted him. The alien woman stood frozen, watching the fight unfold before her. She had never seen a human move like this, never seen one take down a creature so large, so dangerous, with such precision and skill. She had been taught that the Zorathians were the most powerful species in the galaxy, that they were unbeatable. But this human, this strange, resilient, unpredictable human, was making her question everything she knew. The predator, now weakened and disoriented, let out another roar, but this time it was a cry of frustration rather than power. It was no longer the unstoppable force it had been moments ago. The human was taking control of the battle. With another quick motion, the human launched himself from the rock, landing directly behind the predator. Before it could react, he struck again, using the weapon to deliver a final blow to the creature's spine. The predator howled one last time before collapsing to the ground, its massive form twitching as it died. The jungle fell silent once again. The air was thick with the scent of the predator's blood, but now it was the human who stood victorious. The alien woman could hardly believe what she had just witnessed. The human had done what no one could have predicted. He had defeated the predator, the most deadly creature in the jungle, with nothing but his wits, his skill, and a weapon of his own design. And as she looked at him now, standing tall and unscathed, something shifted inside her. The human wasn't just a survivor. He was a hunter. And the alien woman, for the first time in her life, felt the weight of uncertainty. Was her mission to capture him really the right one? Or had she, perhaps, just encountered a being unlike any other? The jungle air was thick with the scent of the fallen predator. The leaves, now heavy with the creature's blood, rustled slightly in the faint breeze. For a moment, everything seemed still, suspended in time. The predator, the mighty beast that had once struck fear into the hearts of every living thing nearby, now lay dead at the human's feet. And the alien woman, who had been sent to capture this human, stood frozen, watching him with new eyes. Her mission had just shifted, and she wasn't sure how to proceed. The human, for his part, seemed almost unfazed by the death of the predator. He didn't celebrate, nor did he pause to savor his victory. He simply stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes scanning the jungle as if nothing had happened. His focus was unwavering, as if he was waiting for something or someone. The alien woman couldn't help but feel that something about him was different from what she had expected. "Impressive," she said finally, her voice breaking the silence. She wasn't sure what else to say, but the words slipped out anyway. "I didn't think you'd survive that." The human turned slowly toward her, his eyes narrowing slightly as he regarded her. There was no surprise, no fear, just quiet confidence. "I didn't think you were going to be watching me either," he replied, his tone a mix of amusement and curiosity. "But here we are." The alien woman wasn't sure what to make of his response. He wasn't angry or defensive. He didn't seem upset that she had been spying on him. Instead, it was almost as if he was acknowledging her presence, considering her as though she were just another part of the jungle. "I've been tracking you for days," the alien woman said, her voice low and cautious. "I didn't expect you to be like this." "Like what?" the human asked, his brow furrowing. She hesitated. How could she put this into words? She had come here expecting to find a fragile creature, someone easy to subdue. But instead, she had found a warrior, someone who moved with purpose, someone who wasn't afraid of danger, someone who could stand toe-to-toe with the deadliest creature in the jungle and come out on top. She had been prepared to capture him, but now, for the first time, she wasn't so sure. "Like someone who can survive against a creature like that," she finally said. "I've never seen a human do something like that before. It's impressive." The human's expression softened slightly, but he didn't respond right away. He seemed to be studying her, as if weighing her words, deciding whether or not to trust her. The alien woman couldn't read his mind, but she could sense that there was more to him than just a survivor. He wasn't the same as the others. There was something in his eyes, a spark of intelligence, of strength, that told her he wasn't like any human she had encountered before. "Well," he said after a moment, his voice calm, "I've had my fair share of challenges, but I wouldn't say I'm special. I just learned how to adapt to my surroundings." The alien woman watched him carefully. She didn't believe him. The way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he handled himself in the face of danger, there was more to him than just adaptation. This human was different, and she couldn't ignore that feeling. The silence stretched between them, and for a moment, the alien woman wondered what would happen next. Was she supposed to capture him? Was she supposed to fight him? Everything had changed in the blink of an eye. She had come to capture him, to bring him back to her people, but now she wasn't so sure. She felt a strange pull toward him, a sense of intrigue that was hard to ignore. Suddenly, the human spoke again, his voice low but firm. "I don't want to fight you." The alien woman was taken aback by the directness of his words. She hadn't expected him to say that, not after everything that had happened. She had come to this jungle with one mission: capture the human, bring him back. But now she wasn't sure she was ready for a fight either. Something about the human's calm demeanor, his resilience, and his ability to survive in this harsh world made her hesitate. "You don't want to fight?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Then what do you want?" The human gave a slight shrug, as though the answer were simple. "I want to survive. I want to be free." The alien woman blinked, trying to understand his words. She had been trained to see all humans as weak, fragile beings who needed to be controlled, subdued, and brought to heel. But the human before her was different. He didn't need her to survive. He was capable, resourceful, and clearly no stranger to danger. He didn't seem to want power or control. He wanted freedom. "I was sent to capture you," she said slowly, her voice quieter now. "But maybe you're not what I thought you were." For a moment, the human said nothing. He just watched her, his face unreadable. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm was about to break. The jungle seemed to hold its breath again, waiting. Finally, he spoke. "You don't have to capture me," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not some prisoner to be taken. I've already survived the worst this jungle has to offer, but that doesn't mean I won't fight if I have to. I'm not afraid of a challenge." The alien woman's mind raced. She had been trained to believe that humans were weak, that they couldn't survive in the harshest environments. Yet, here was a human who had not only survived but thrived. He was strong, stronger than she had ever expected. She had thought she could easily take him down, subdue him with her technology and strength. But now she wasn't so sure. In fact, she realized it was becoming clear that capturing him might be more of a challenge than she had anticipated. "Challenge?" she asked, her voice thick with skepticism. "You think this is a challenge?" The human smiled, a small, almost knowing smile that made the alien woman's heart beat a little faster. There was something about the way he carried himself, something that told her he had faced greater dangers than she could even imagine. "Everything's a challenge," he replied. "But the real challenge is knowing how to face it. You have to be prepared for anything, even when the odds are against you." His words resonated with her in a way she hadn't expected. She had come to this planet thinking she would easily capture him, bring him back to her people as a prize. But now she found herself facing a situation she couldn't control. The human wasn't what she had been taught to expect. He wasn't weak. He wasn't fragile. And he wasn't afraid to fight for what he wanted. The alien woman found herself looking at him differently now, not just as a target, but as something else. A challenge, yes, but also a puzzle, one she couldn't quite figure out. She took a step forward, her hand still resting on her weapon, but her fingers no longer itching to use it. She studied him carefully, trying to read his intentions. But the more she looked at him, the more uncertain she became. "You're right," she said softly. "This is a challenge, but it's one I didn't expect." The human's smile widened slightly, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. "It's always the unexpected that makes life interesting, don't you think?" The alien woman didn't respond immediately. She couldn't. She was still processing everything. Here she was, facing a human who had not only survived against the deadliest creatures of the jungle, but had also outsmarted her at every turn. She had come here to capture him, to prove her superiority. But now, for the first time, she wasn't so sure. "Maybe," she said finally, her voice filled with something she hadn't expected to feel. "Respect. Maybe it's time I stop underestimating you." The human nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Maybe it is." The jungle around them seemed to sigh, as if the challenge had only just begun. Both of them stood in the same place, but now the rules of their interaction had changed. What had started as a mission of capture was now something much more complicated. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about respect, about understanding each other as something more than enemies. And somewhere deep inside, the alien woman knew that this wasn't going to be an easy victory. If anything, it was a challenge she was only just beginning to understand. The jungle had once again fallen into an eerie quiet. The sounds of the previous battle, the predator's roars, the sound of weapon fire, the footsteps of both the human and the alien woman, had faded. Now, only the distant call of birds and the rustling of leaves filled the air. The jungle had returned to its natural rhythm, as if nothing had happened. But for the two beings standing in the clearing, everything had changed. The alien woman was still processing what had happened. Her mission had been simple at first: capture the human, bring him back to her people. But now nothing felt simple anymore. She had seen him face the predator, an apex hunter, and come out victorious. That alone had shaken her. She had thought humans were fragile, easily defeated by a creature of such power. But this human, this being standing before her, had not only survived, he had bested the creature. And now, after their brief exchange, the alien woman felt something shift inside her. It was a strange feeling, unfamiliar and unsettling. It was respect, but it was also something else, something that made her wonder if her mission was even the right one anymore. The human turned away from her, his eyes scanning the jungle once more. He was calm, collected, and unbothered by the gravity of what had just occurred. It was as if he was already looking beyond the moment, as if he was used to such things. The alien woman wasn't sure what to make of it. Was he really so unaffected by what had just happened? Did he not realize how extraordinary it was for a human to defeat such a creature? Finally, the human spoke. "You're still here," he said, turning to face her again. "I thought you would have left by now." The alien woman was taken aback by his comment. She hadn't expected him to speak so casually, as though nothing of importance had just happened. But she was no stranger to surprises. Her own mission was a constant reminder that the unexpected could always emerge, and this situation was no different. "I'm not sure what I expected," she admitted, her voice softer than usual. "I didn't think you would survive. I didn't think anyone could defeat the predator. Not like that." The human gave a small, almost knowing smile. "You thought I was just some fragile human, huh?" She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I thought you were weak," she said finally, "but now I'm not so sure." There was a brief silence between them. The human's gaze softened, and for the first time, the alien woman saw something in his eyes, something that made her pause. It wasn't arrogance or pride. It was something deeper, something real. "You're not the only one who's been underestimating humans," he said quietly. "But it's not just about surviving. It's about understanding why we survive, about knowing how to adapt, how to fight, how to think our way out of situations. That's what makes us dangerous." The alien woman frowned. "Dangerous? You? You're not like the others. You're different. I don't know what to make of you." The human chuckled lightly, shaking his head. That's the thing, isn't it? You think all humans are the same, but we're not. Just like any other species, we're different from one another. Some of us are weak, sure, but others can do things you wouldn't believe.